Hi. Recently somebody sent me this Spear Gold Dot personal protection ammunition in caliber 5.7 by 28 with a 40 grain jacketed hollow point projectile. Asked me to evaluate it, so here we are. Now this comes with the normal caveats, but one that's very important is that in today's presentation I'm going to try to make this evaluation as fair as I can. But as fair as I can might not be absolutely fair. I can only compare the Spear Gold Dot ammunition to the other types of 5.7 by 28 to which I have access. And what I have access to is this FN ammunition, which is 5.7 by 28 with a 40 grain VMAX projectile like a ballistic tip. I also have the Federal American Eagle 5.7 by 28 with a 40 grain full metal jacket spear point, and this FN ammo, which is 5.7 by 28 with a 27 grain lead-free projectile. Now these are hollow point projectiles. However, the hollow points aren't really made to expand. More on that later. So I've got these types of ammunition. I have my Ruger 5.7 pistol with a 4 7/8 inch barrel, and we'll start this evaluation by going to the chronograph. Now the chronograph segments can be tedious, so if you find this part tedious, I invite everyone to fast forward to where you see me standing next to the chart with the numbers on it. Okay, if you're still here, I've got the chronograph set up at 7 yards. I've got my Ruger 5.7, and I'm going to start with this FN ammunition, which to be technical is SS-197 SR ammo, which is 5.7 by 28 with the 40 grain VMAX projectile. $17.15. 1691, 1696, 1694, 1711, and 1673. Let's see how that compares to our next type of ammo. And now I'm loaded with the SS-198 LF ammunition, which is 5.7 by 28 with the 27 grain projectile. $20.86, 21.26, 21.20, 2101, 2122, 2103, and 2114. Let's try another type of ammo. And now our Federal American Eagle ammunition, 5.7 by 28 with a 40 grain full metal jacket spear point projectile. $15.69, 15.64, 15.73, 15.85, 15.59, and 15.99. Now, let's try our Spear Gold Dot ammunition. And now, our Spear Gold Dot personal protection 5.7 by 28 40 grain jacketed hollow point. $18.04, 17.82, 18.11, 1789, 1789, 1801, and 1778. Now let's go crunch the numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers and here's the results. Now with our FN ammunition with this 40 grain VMAX projectile, we got a velocity of 1,696. I consider this ammunition to be the standard by which all 5.7 by 28 ammunitions are judged, just because when I go to various gun stores, this is the ammunition that is by far the most common. So if we use this as our basis of comparison and look at our other ammunitions, With our other FN ammo, with its 27 grain projectile, we got a velocity of 2110. That's a lot more, but it's a significantly lighter projectile. Now, our Federal American Eagle ammunition is a 40 grain full metal jacket spear point projectile. It's just target ammunition. We would expect it to perhaps have lower velocity, and that's what we got. At 1574, that's 122 feet per second less than our VMAX ammo. But with our Spear Gold Dot ammo, with its 40 grain jacketed hollow point, we got a velocity of 1794. That's 98 feet per second more than our VMAX projectile. If we were talking about 45 ACP, where we might very well have velocities in the 8 to 900 range, I would say that 98 feet per second more is a lot more. But when we're talking about velocities in the 17 to 1800 feet per second range, is 98 feet per second more a lot more? I don't know if I'd say a lot, but I would say that it is significantly more. It's definitely noteworthy. But it brings up the question of energy foot-pounds. With our 27 grain projectile being propelled at 2110 feet per second, how does that translate into energy foot-pounds compared to the others? It is common that when you have a lighter projectile propelled at significantly greater velocities, you can get more energy foot-pounds. But in this case, if I did my math right, with the VMAX projectile, we're getting 255 energy foot-pounds. With the 27 grain, we're getting 266, which is technically more, but not that much more. And with our Spear Gold Dot ammunition, 285 energy foot-pounds. So, a lot of times a lighter projectile, greater velocity, more energy foot-pounds. In this case, not so much. But as I've said so many times, these are just numbers on a page. How do these numbers translate into effectiveness on the target? Let's see if we can put that to the test. So to evaluate how our ammunition might perform in the intended target, we're going to use an analog for a thoracic cavity that's become known as the meat target. Now, for those who haven't seen it before, the meat target is leather jacket skin followed by pork chop pectorals, pork ribs, a bag of oranges to simulate lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, 4 layers of t-shirt on the front, 4 layers on the back, and the whole thing followed by the new and improved high-tech fleece bullet stop. And I've got the Ruger 5.7 loaded with our FN SS-197SR ammunition with its 40 grain VMAX projectile. And I'll shoot the meat target from 10 yards, we'll evaluate the results, and then we'll see how the Spear Gold Dot ammunition compares. Now we've got the meat target taken apart, but before we evaluate it, let me take a minute to point out that these are safety glasses. And although I do not consider them necessary when shooting paper targets or using the chronograph, I do wear them when shooting the meat target. Okay, now let's take a look at the meat target. Here's our pork chop pectoral, and you can see no damage. Yeah, it does have a couple of bullet holes in it, but they're so small they're hardly noticeable. Here's our ribs on the front of the target. We see the same result. But let's look at the back of these ribs. By the time the projectiles have come through these ribs, they are expanding, they're tumbling, they're fragmenting, and where those projectiles have hit the ribs have shattered them. So we see a lot of damage to our orange lung tissue. And the projectiles, or at least the fragments of them, were stopped by the ribs on the back of the target or the t-shirt on the back of the target. Now let me show you a close-up of what's left of our projectiles. And here's what's left of our VMAX projectiles. Now I have a new meat target set up, and I have my Ruger 5.7 loaded with the Spear Gold Dot ammunition with its 40 grain jacketed hollow point. So I'll shoot this from 10 yards, and let's see how we do. Well, I've got the meat target taken apart, and we see a few differences with the Spear Gold Dot ammunition. First, the ribs on the front of the target, the entrance holes are really obvious. We did a lot of damage, and where the projectiles hit the ribs, shattered them. We still see a lot of damage to our orange lung tissue. Interesting difference is the ribs on the back of the target. In this case, all 5 projectiles hit these ribs, and all 5 went through. Now, when I'm shooting meat targets like this with conventional handgun hollow point ammunition, 9x19, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, the most common results I get is that those hollow points expand and that they are stopped by the t-shirt on the back of the target or by the first 1 or 2 layers of fleece. In this case, we saw a difference. Although 2 of the projectiles were stopped by the t-shirt on the back of the target, 3 of them penetrated into the fleece to between the 20th and 30th layer, showing what would appear a potential for overpenetration. Now, why is that? Well, let me show you a close-up of the projectiles and it might illustrate why. And here's our Spear Gold Dot projectiles. Now remember, these have a velocity of almost 1,800 feet per second. And we see marginal expansion on a couple of them, but on the rest, the expansion is minimal down to almost none. Thus, reduced damage to the target and greater potential for overpenetration. So in shooting the meat target with 2 types of 5.7 by 28 ammunition, was that a lot of damage or a little? Let's see if I can put that in perspective. I've got a new meat target set up, and I'll shoot this from 10 yards with my Smith & Wesson Model 638, which is loaded with Remington green and white box 38 Special Plus P 125 grain semi-jacketed hollow point. Let's see how this compares to the damage we got with the 5.7 by 28. So how does the 38 Special compare with 5.7 by 28? Well, as far as the pork chop pectorals, there's entrance holes that can easily be seen with the unaided eye. As far as the ribs on the front of the target, where the projectiles hit ribs, shattered them, we see a lot of damage to our orange lung tissue, and the ribs on the back of the target also have significant holes in them, and where projectiles hit ribs, broke them. Now, as far as penetration, 1 of the projectiles was stopped by the ribs on the back of the target. The other 4 were stopped by the t-shirt on the back of the target, so very little potential for overpenetration. Now, some people will point out that the meat target is meaningless and so forth. However, I can tell you that I have shot deer with a snub-nose 38, and I've shot deer with a 5.7 by 28 pistol, and the results I'm getting here are mimicking the results I got in shooting deer quite well. In fact, I can say the 38 snub nose was more effective on deer than the 5.7. But let's take a close-up look at the 38 projectiles. And there's our 38 Special projectiles, some of which have fairly good expansion, some of which mediocre expansion. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a snub 38 is superior to a Ruger 5.7. The Ruger might have a few advantages. Let me show you one. See a possible advantage there? Now, a couple more things to add. First, a moment ago I mentioned hunting deer with the snub 38 and with the 5.7 by 28. Before anybody sends me any hate mail, I did that under conditions which were 100% legal. And although the 5.7 by 28 cartridge delivered disappointing results while hunting deer, I had crew members backing me up with rifles, so no laws were broken and no undue suffering of animals occurred. Another thing to add is that we have a presentation on different types of 5.7 by 28 ammunition, and we have a presentation comparing the FN 5.7 and the Ruger 5.7, so for more information you can watch those. But as far as today's results, we saw that the Spear Gold Dot ammunition, although more powerful than the SS-197SR ammunition, didn't seem to do any more damage to our meat target, but it did have greater potential for overpenetration. So, to be redundant in terminology, I'd have to say that the results of the Spear Gold Dot were disappointing. So, as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Spear Gold Dot Personal Protection 5.7 by 28 40 grain jacketed hollow point projectile video.